Thanks for doing this.
Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can get more information and listen to previous shows on our website, www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Mark Allen with the Tryon Little Theater. Is it that the title of it?
Yes, Tryon Little Theater.
And Mark is the president of the board of Tryon Little Theater. But in addition, in his spare time, he's now starring in a show that I think opens tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and the show is Showboat. Not Showboat. Listen to me.
State Fair.
State Fair. Close enough. And let me ask you first of all, before we talk about the show itself, as a kid, you grew up where?
Well, I grew up in Baltimore.
Okay. As a kid, did you always know you wanted to be a star of musical theater?
No, no, I didn't. Actually, it was in high school that I got involved in theater. I was kind of a klutzy kid, and I got involved in theater, and it was illuminating to me. It was really great.
By the way, you mentioned that you were a klutzy kid. I find it hard to believe, in that I was really impressed with your dancing last night. No, I mean, and I'm giving it away a little bit, but Mark is in the show I mentioned, and he's kind of one of the stars of the show. And he dances, he sings, he raises pigs, also does it all. Had you ever done singing and dancing before?
Before?
Well, you were in high school. Were you in any musicals?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did musicals in high school. I sang in the church choir when I was a kid, when I was younger.
What was the first show you were ever in? Do you remember?
The first show I was ever in was called The Cave Dwellers by William Saroyan, I think.
Right.
And I played the young opponent, which was a bit part. I was in the lead character's dream, and I danced onto the stage, boxed with him, and then disappeared. And that was it. That was my first role.
Because I ask you that for a reason, and I have a fundraiser idea for Tryon Little Theater, Mark. And I've always thought, wouldn't it be great if everybody recreated their first role? In other words, the one you were in that role, I assume you don't have a video of that?
No.
Wouldn't that be cool if you could recreate it now, all these years later? And so you would do your first role, everybody would do their first role. I just think that'd be a lot of fun, wouldn't it?
That would be a lot of fun.
And you could have a video of it as well. So you started out then in high school. Take from there your performing career. Did you perform in other shows in high school and elsewhere?
High school was great. I did some stuff. I worked at a dinner theater club one summer. I did some summer stuff. Majored in theater my freshman year at Towson University, and then my parents moved to Memphis, and I went down for the summer and ended up staying. I worked at Circuit Playhouse in Memphis for 2.5 years or so, and then I decided I wanted to be a rock star instead. And started moving around the country, playing with different people. Ended up getting married. My wife got pregnant. We came to North Carolina where her parents lived, and I ended up getting a real job. It's a pretty standard story.
So the rock star career did for a while. That's so cool. But then what did you play? What did you play in the band?
I'm a guitar player.
Okay. Are you still a guitar player?
A little bit.
Okay. So you gave up the performing career, and then you moved to North Carolina to do, in your other life, what did you do?
I was still trying. It's interesting. It's been an interesting trajectory. I still had visions of playing music. So I wanted to work part-time, and I was doing lawn care and landscaping and stuff to keep my schedule open. I didn't want a real job. And a friend of mine recruited me to be a chimney sweep. So I went to work for Batcave Stoves as a chimney sweep, and just progressed through that organization. The owner was very entrepreneurial, and he was trying to grow the company, and he decided to get into the heating and air conditioning business. He got his license. He did that for a year, and then he tapped me and said, "You're going to get your license. We're going to do this." So I did. In 1987, I got my heating license. It actually started we had a wood stove company, and one of our competitors turned him into the licensing board for installing a wood furnace without license.
Oh,
So I said, "Okay, well then I'll go get my license." And he did, and it just progressed, and it ended up growing into a $20 million company.
and so that's what you did most of your, I guess we'll call it adult life.
Yes.
And at that point in time, you weren't performing?
No.
Okay. Did you
Too
miss it?
busy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did. It's a real commitment. Theater is a tremendous commitment, and it takes a lot of time. And when you've got kids and the career and everything growing, it's really hard to do. And I have a profound respect for these people that continue to do it. I didn't actually get back into it until I retired.
And we should mention that, and I'm glad you did, in terms of why I encourage people to see live theater, because they don't realize, you're going to have a run of what, 2 weeks or something?
Two
For
weekends.
2 weekends.
Yeah.
And yet you've been working on this for how long, this particular show?
Well, different people have been working on it a different amount of time, but we have been in rehearsal for 6 weeks. We started working on it over 8 weeks ago, learning the songs and learning the music before rehearsals even began. And the director's been working on it for a year.
Okay, and since you mentioned him, we'll give a shout out. The name of the director is?
Dan Harvey.
Okay, and just did a phenomenal job putting the show together, which wasn't an easy show to put together. But I cut you off there. You were saying all of a sudden then you retired, and what, your wife got you back into the theater?
Actually, I started a little before I retired, but retirement was on the horizon. Yeah. She encouraged me with an elbow. She forcefully encouraged me to go audition for a show, the book club play at Tryon Little Theater. I had a friend who was involved with it and had said, you should do that. You should get back into it. And she'd brought it up several times over the years, and I just was always too busy. So I did. I went and auditioned, and I got the part and got in, and I've been doing it ever since. I've done 2-3 shows a year ever since.
I'm so sorry,
That
by
was
the way, I missed
2019.
that show. It's an interesting play to see too. So that was a great way to get back in. And in addition to getting back into the acting, you also kind of are involved with the theater now. You're board president.
I am. Yeah,
Okay.
I dove in with both feet, I guess.
How long have you been doing that?
A year.
Okay. And for the benefit of the folks who don't know Tryon Little Theater, talk a little bit about it, Mark, in terms of, first of all, where is it? And then describe the theater, if you would.
Tryon Little Theater is a small theater, obviously in Tryon. Started in the 1940s. It's one of the oldest community theaters in Western North Carolina. And we've moved around a lot over the years. And we're currently in a funky old metal building on Trade Street that used to be a Napa parts store. It's a black box theater, but we do 1 or 2 or 3. We try to do a couple of shows a year at TFAC, which is the Fine Arts Center, which is where this musical is, the what we call the big theater with the big stage. They have a real stage. Our workshop theater, we call it the workshop, is a black box theater on Trade Street in that funky old metal building, and it's pretty cool. But Tryon Little Theater is a storied institution really in the area.
I'm so glad I had a phone number to call last night, because I actually went to the other theater, and I'm saying, well, nobody's there, and then somebody told me get over to the Fine Arts Center, and boy, is that a beautiful facility to have a show in,
Yes,
it?
it is. It really is.
And how many that seats? How many? Do you know? A lot of people.
About 250.
Yeah, great show, and a great place to see a show, and just loved it there. And so let's go then. So you got back into the theater several years ago, started acting, and then all of a sudden you're doing this particular show. How did the theater come up with this show to do?
The board has a play selection committee, every year, and they sequester themselves and brainstorm about the upcoming season, which is typically 4 shows. We usually do 1 or 2 musicals and 2 or 3 dramas or comedies, non-musical shows, and they kick around directors that might be available and shows that we might be able to license. It's a complicated process, and what would be popular, what the audience wants to see. So they came up with this, and this was a show that Dan had in the back of his mind as a possibility. We'd actually done this show about 20 years ago, I think. Tryon Little Theater did it once before. It's a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. It's a big production. It's pretty ambitious.
By the way, did anybody show up, or did they come out of the woodwork who did the show originally 20 years ago? Did anybody remember it?
There are some people that are in it that
Oh.
that were in the show 20 years ago.
Are they really? Oh, is that
Yeah.
too cool? The I guess some of the parts changed a little bit, or I guess the ones 20 years ago didn't play the younger leads. When they may play the younger leads at the time, but they wouldn't qualify for this as well. Talk a little bit about the show, Mark, for people not familiar with it. And I vaguely recall the movie, but what's the show all about?
There were actually 2 movies. They remade it. The original movie was made in the 40s, and this was written for a movie. Rodgers and Hammerstein actually wrote the score and the book for a movie in 46, I think. No, it had to be later than that, because the state fair takes place in 46.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So the movie would have come out after that. Pat Boone and Anne Margaret did it again in the 60s. They remade the movie, and it actually didn't make it to Broadway until the 90s. This show was actually on Broadway in the 90s. My wife and I watched the 46 movie, and I like the script, the theater script, better than I like the movie. Actually, the story goes along, but it's about an Iowa farm family going to the Iowa State Fair, which in 46 was a really big deal. I mean, that was one of the big things of the year that they did. And they win prizes, and their 2 kids have romances at the fair that change their lives. And I don't want to tell too much about it, because you need to come see the show, but it's pretty cool.
No, it really is. And I'm almost getting a chill talking about it, because it's a pretty cool, but it's a fun show. You have to, as Mark said, see it. As a kid or any time in your life, did you ever go to a state fair?
I went to fairs. I don't know that I ever went to a state fair, certainly not one like this. The agricultural aspect of it, the farm aspect of the Iowa State Fair in 1946 was way bigger. I remember rides, Ferris wheels, and that was my thing.
As you said, I remember a couple of years ago to the North Carolina State Fair, but it's like nothing like this. It's just quite something, and it's just so much fun. So people can see you going to the fair. In terms of the putting the show together, you were telling me this was a process. It took what, 6 to 8 weeks to just put it together?
Yes.
Describe what happens, Mark, in terms of you start on the show, and then I guess do you do auditions, or what happened?
Yes, there are auditions. If you get community theater, you don't. It's not like a professional theater where actors show up from everywhere and you get to pick and choose the cream of the crop for what you want to do. Community theater, a lot of times we're recruiting people to be in the show. The auditions may produce a full cast and they may not. And a show this big, that's this complicated, is put together in bits and pieces. We started out rehearsing the acting on specific scenes. The director blocks it, where he tells you where to walk and where to sit and where to go. The set people are working on sets. The actors don't even have the sets. They don't even know what the sets are. We're rehearsing in our little black box theater on Trade Street. You start working with the music director on music. You start learning harmony parts. We record different parts and you practice them you may be practicing at home on a harmony part for a couple of weeks before you ever even come together with the people that you actually sing that song with. Then the choreographers come in and we're learning a dance. And then you have to sing and dance at the same time. So you've been learning the dance and you've been learning the songs and you've been learning the harmony part to the songs. And then at some point you put it all together and you're dancing and singing, and it's hilarious because we're all falling all over ourselves, making mistakes, forgetting the words, forgetting the steps. And theater, if there is such a thing as theater magic, theater can be magic for the audience, but for the actors, it's the fact that this is such a disjointed, cut up process. You're going along doing bits and pieces, and then one day, miraculously, it just all comes together, and you're like, holy cow, this is actually a show.
Well, same thing I should share with you that, yeah, I saw it last night. I saw I guess the final dress rehearsal, and boy, did it come together. I can't believe you said that, it was a process because it just was so coherent. And what amazed me in particular, Mark, about the show last night is that the casting, I thought, was just about perfect. I love when I see casting, and every role I thought just about hit it, so however you folks got the actors you got for it, but boy, were they good. Even like the lead, wasn't the lead, the reporter. I understand that was the first time he had acted for Tryon Little Theater.
Oh, no.
Oh, he had
No,
acted before?
Trey's been acting for a while, and he acts down in Spartanburg. He's actually going to do dinner theater in Alaska for the whole season. He's going to be acting in a dinner theater in Denali from May to September this year. I'm really excited. And in fact, he's done that once before. That's the second time. Trey was in Bright Star in 2020 that Dan also directed. I was as well. We were both in, that's where I met him.
Oh, I can't believe you did Bright Star. I'm so sorry I missed it. Wow, that was an ambitious production, wasn't it?
That was a great show.
Oh, I can't believe it because I saw it a couple of years ago. They're doing it at Asheville Community Theater this year, but you were one of the first ones to do it locally, Bright Star. So, boy, he was a talented guy. So, I could see him acting elsewhere, but I can almost see everybody acting elsewhere. Did you have it in this show? Did you have any people performing for the first time with the Tryon Little Theater?
The clown, the little girl that
Okay.
plays the clown, and Ella, the daughter, that goes crazy for my son, the 11-year-old. I think this is her first show. I could be mistaken about that, but I think this is her first show. She's done a tremendous job. She's really funny.
By the way, as you mentioned that one scene, as you're describing, we're not giving it away, but boy, was that a sweet scene, where she falls for
Yeah.
a son. How old is she, by the way? Is she?
She's 12.
Yeah, she looked. I could see a perfect 11-year-old. But and the one scene, I just have to compliment the people as well. The judging scene was just hysterical. Where first of all, it was so funny to watch you. You sneak in, and then I thought that was it. And then your wife sneaks in and adds more to it. That judging scene was really funny. I guess I'm giving it away, but you just encourage people to see it. Mark, if they want to see the show, talk about the run. When do they have to see it?
This is opening night tonight. We run tonight and tomorrow night, and then there's a matinee at 3 o'clock on Sunday. And then next weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we run Friday night, Saturday night, and a matinee on Sunday. So there's 6 shows, 2 weekends, and you should come see it.
You really should. I'm not saying it just because you're in front of me, but it's a delightful show. Really pleasantly surprised me because I don't really remember the movie. But let me ask you that in general. If you're going to be in a show, do you try to see the movie beforehand or you wait till after the show?
Personally, as an actor, I like to not see how other people have interpreted this role or this show until I've got it kind of in my head. And then depending on what the show is, sometimes I'll watch what's out there to compare notes. sometimes I won't. I think it's a little dangerous to be overly influenced by what somebody else did until you've got a clear idea in your own head how you want to react with this material.
And I have to ask you also, because I was so impressed with your work as a pig farmer, so in another life, had you been a pig farmer?
I have not been a pig farmer, but it's funny you should say that because my costumes look like how I dress, and everybody's making fun of me that my fashion aesthetic is as a 40s Iowa pig farmer.
But we're so good too, though, to the credit then of the sound people, whoever did that. But boy, you could almost see the pig, in front of you, and how you were fighting to control it and move it along with the two or three, and their sounds really well done. So kudos to whoever put that together as well. Let me ask you one other thing too that was very impressive. The talk about the sets, and what was the idea behind the sets that you actually see? It almost looked like a state fair, in the background. How'd that come about?
Well, Lindsay Moore is our set designer and constructor. He built a lot of that with volunteer help. He's got a great crew. In fact, most of them were there last night with you. They come to we always invite the crew to the dress rehearsal. That's theater magic too. You have a limited amount of space, and you have a limited amount of space off stage. You have to move these pieces on and off. There are traffic jams backstage constantly. There's not room for a whole group of people to do the set. So the actors themselves are moving the set pieces on and off. A lot of the set pieces double as two or three things. The backdrops, as you mentioned, are really gorgeous. We're really lucky to have some wonderful backdrops. But you suggest things. The audience's imagination is a big part of the whole process, which is why I love live theater. The audience participates. The audience is part of the show. We couldn't do it without them. And you make suggestions to the audience about what this is, and they fill in the details.
And like I said, the suggestions worked because not only the scene with you with the pig, several times, but the judging of the contest, I could almost feel like I was there, which was so cool, that people having this judging. And again, I will give a shout out if you know the woman's name, the one who kind of was the head judge. Do you know her name off the top of your head? The one who
Cindy, yes.
Yeah, boy, was she funny, in not a big role, but what was so great too, Mark, is all the people, and 25, it was cast of what, 25?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that the biggest cast you've ever been in or had there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty impressive to get them all going. But almost everybody in the cast, and this is a compliment to the director, and hopefully he'll hear the show, but I can always see if there's good direction, if not only gets the main actors going, but all the side people, all the other people in the show were really into it. I just really enjoyed the expression they had. They were at the fair and they were smiling and they were enjoying it, because it kind of ruins it. I don't know if you've ever seen a show where people are kind of just walking through the motions. But here, kudos to I guess the director, that everybody felt like they were part of the show, and part of the
Thank
fair.
you for that.
No,
That'll make Dan very happy because he focused on that a lot.
no, please tell him that, because again, I've seen too many shows where they do a great job with the leading performers, and the other people are just kind of by the wayside. But they were so enthusiastic; they had such smiles. And sometimes when my wife will watch a show with me, we'll notice that and say, "Boy, that person's not really into it or not having a good time." But everybody there seemed to have a good time in the show. So that was just a lot of fun.
Dan really emphasized that a lot. He says, "You're at the state fair. You got to just have fun with this. Please have fun. Enjoy yourself."
It really was. With respect to the Little Theater, now this is your second to last show. What's the next show coming up?
It's called Boeing. It'll be in May, and I can't remember the exact dates, but they're on the website. Boeing is a comedy. It's about an airline pilot who has a girlfriend, like the sailor with a girl in every port. He's an airline pilot that has a girlfriend near every airport. And they all come together at his apartment one weekend unexpectedly. And it's just an incredible comedy about him trying to save himself from having all his girlfriends meet each other.
Are you in that show also?
No.
Almost too bad, because I love the show. It's just a fun show, and I could see you having that role too. Um, being that guy with all his girlfriends all over. I don't know if your wife would have liked it, but that'd be a fun show to be in.
Thank you. Actually, I'm not sure they've had auditions yet, but I
Well,
think I'm going to take a rest after State Fair.
your big chance. But just amazes me. You talk about actors, Mark, that some actors can be in one show, auditioning for another, rehearsing another. Have you ever had to do that? I guess in college, when you were, especially in summer stock, you had to do like a couple of shows kind of simultaneously. Have you ever had to do that?
Yes, I did do that once. Some of the actors in this show were actually doing a show at Spartanburg, and couldn't come to the first rehearsals. We actually started rehearsing the first week without them because they were still doing a show down there, and they came up here, and they're just incredible. They already knew like half of their lines, even though they were doing another show when they started rehearsing with us. I'm just so impressed with the young people in this cast. I'm impressed with everybody in this
Well, you're
cast.
saying, and again, what I loved about the show, you said the young people, but I don't want to say old people, but everybody, like you said, everybody in the cast hits it, and I'm saying that, and then I'll see a show 25, and a couple people won't, be perfect for the role. I thought everybody just about perfect for the role. The young people, the romance part of it, loved it. You mentioned in terms of getting tickets, if you would, the website, if you would mention that.
Yes, tltinfo.org. And there's a link that tells you about the shows and the theater and the season. And there's a link to our ticket purchasing app. I can't even remember what it's called.
Okay, well, they'll get to it there.
But you can buy tickets online there, or you
Oh,
can
yeah.
call the theater.
Okay, and do you know the number of
The
fans
phone
or it's at the
numbers,
website?
the phone numbers on the website. You can call the theater, and Jody will hook you up or leave a message.
Okay, again, I've bought tickets that way, very easy, and it's both in the Black Box Theater, every seat's a perfect seat almost, and also at the theater you were at last night or tonight, perfect, beautiful little theater. It's just a great place to see a show. Last question, Mark, in terms of your work with the board, do you seek if anybody wants to volunteer to get involved in the theater, can they do so?
Absolutely, yeah. Call. We're a community theater. We're a volunteer organization. We don't have people at the office all the time. Somebody comes in a couple hours every day, but leave a message, call and leave a message. We will get back to you.
And talk about the things that people can do if they want to volunteer with the theater, aside from being performers. You need help in other areas as well.
All of it. We need help in the shop building sets. We need costume help, musicians, musical help, or people that sing or do music, painting sets. There are countless opportunities to help out.
And so I hear you saying if somebody gives you a call or contacts you through the website, you want to put them to work?
We can, yeah.
Okay, super. Mark Allen, I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of the BLAINESWORLD podcast. I wish you the best in the show starting tonight, next 2 weekends. It's almost a shame you're just doing this 2 weekends for all the work you put into it. After 6 shows, that must be quite an experience, to be over with it. And then I guess on to the next show. Is that what it's all about?
Yeah, it is. It is. Sometimes it's sad, but we celebrate. We'll have a cast party at the end.
Well, you deserve it. Mark Allen, thank you for being my guest on this edition of BLAINESWORLD podcast. Best of luck in the show. I encourage anybody listening or watching this, see the show. You're going to have a delightful time. And I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. And we'll see you folks next on the next BLAINESWORLD podcast. Mark, thanks again.
Thank you.
still on, I think, but turn it off in just a second. And